It's been a long time, friends. Been a long time. I've taken a little bit of a high. Oh God, I need to stop moving around on this chair. Um, Hello, it's me, the based centrist, the basest of the based, and I am back. I have taken a bit of hiatus for a while. Just honestly got a bit like burnt out with a lot of stuff when it comes to political things. I was appearing on Break the Rules. I was having like public spats on Twitter with like far right monarchist type people. To be honest with you, it was just kind of getting on top of me. I felt like I constantly needed to be on board all the time, and it was kind of affecting my mental state, and it was affecting other things in my life as well, my relationships with people. So I just thought, you know what, fuck it, I need to take a break. So that's what I did, and started a new job. I'm working, all that kind of jazz. I feel back on track, and today, as I was walking to work, I was watching the debate with Lauren Southern and Fanatic and Mr. Girl and all those people about Destiny's ban from Twitch, his permanent ban from Twitch. And it got me thinking, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while. And I know that I'm probably not going to be completely original here in this take, but it got me thinking about freedom of speech, the history of freedom of speech, and why it's so relevant to the liberal philosophy, essentially, and why it's such a struggle to keep hold of it. And at the end of the day, I think freedom of speech is kind of over. And I think, and it was a brief flash in the pan there for a while. But I think ultimately we've reached a point now where it's just not possible. Freedom of speech is just not possible. It will not be possible given current circumstances unless it is upheld by governments. However, it's not really in the best interest of governments to allow freedom of speech to get out of control because, governments, they like to kind of abuse power and all that kind of stuff. So, they're not really the type of people that want to, they don't really give too much of a shit about freedom of speech, really. So, first, before I get into what I actually think of freedom of speech and what's happened to it, especially in America in particular, because America is probably one of the only places in the world that has ever actually had freedom of speech, other than maybe some of the Greek city-states back in the days that we all know and love. So, what are we doing here? Oh, no, I was looking at the wrong one here. So, freedom of speech, origins. So, let's take a little look at where this comes from. I'm just using the wiki for now because it's just a quick look back into where this started, where it came from. Now, it does have a long history, as it says. And in the Roman Republic, there was freedom of speech in the Roman Republic and in the Athenian democratic principalities as well. So, there is... the idea of freedom of speech does date back quite a long time, and it's a very interesting thing, really. And with the beginning of the printing press as well, it really revolutionized like the voice of the common people. And before that point in time, especially with the printing press in particular, the voice of the common people was essentially completely squashed by all authority in the land, which was your religious leaders and your nobles and kings, queens, etc., etc. These were the people that controlled public information, speech, and public opinion. They essentially curated everything for people, and this meant that it was very difficult for people to organize or get their voices heard. It actually exacerbated a lot of issues because it meant that one of the only ways that people could get their point across was through violent rebellion, which was usually violently quashed by the government in power at the time, usually the king. And, and the leaders of those movements were horrendously mutilated and killed for even trying to bother to have an opinion, essentially. So the biggest push in mainstream consciousness that we know of for freedom of speech after hundreds of years of freedom of speech being completely and utterly demolished is in France. In the Revolution, they created a constitution in 1791, which gave freedom of speech. Now, this didn't go very well, because only a few short years later, if you can see this article here, I'll just check my OBS. Let's just bring that in a little bit, and I'll move myself out of the way a tad as well. There we go. So, as you can see here, what happened was that a few years later, what is known as the Terror took hold, and the liberal people who took over the government, who were trying to start this liberal, enlightened kind of new democracy, republic kind of government, kind of similar to America. They were trying to be like America. America actually in the same year, or was it the year after, created their own constitution, I think. I might be getting the dates wrong a little bit there, but it was roughly about the same kind of time. So the Reign of Terror began in 1793. So this is 4 short years later. And the convention, which was the government of the time, liberals apparently, passed the law of suspects in order to identify and punish any alleged enemies of the revolution. This law also created the Revolutionary Tribunal, which would try accused enemies of the state and execute them if found guilty, according to Ian Davidson's book, The French Revolution. The law of suspects also authorized the arrest of anyone who, by their writings, have shown themselves partisans of tyranny, according to Liberty, Equality and Fraternity Exploring the French Revolution, a website run by George Mason University and City University of New York. This prevented any criticism of or opposition to the convention, aka the government of the time, which meant that they didn't have freedom of speech. They may have put it in the constitution, but they did not have freedom of speech. They were actually murdered most of the time for having opinions outside of the political norm, which they were trying to violently oppress into people, which again to me is completely antithetical to the notion and the philosophy of liberalism itself. So they completely and utterly spectacularly failed in their attempt to have any kind of liberalism in France. So to me, the French liberal revolution was a complete and utter failure, and I guess it was Napoleon that was trying to reinstate that later on down the line. But in all honesty, I think that's probably a little debatable. Now, as you can see here, the UK has freedom of expression. And freedom of expression is basically a caveated term. Sorry, what am I doing? I'm all over the place today. I haven't done a video in a while, so please forgive me. But freedom of speech in the UK has had a very checkered past, and to be honest with you, we've just never had it. One of the things I always say about the differences between American people and the British is that in the USA, they've always had freedom of speech, and because of that, that is kind of what gives them their brash, outspoken, and what many people consider to be their obnoxious kind of side. Personally, I like it. I prefer that kind of attitude. However, like a lot of people in the UK and Europe in general do tend to not gravitate towards the Americans for that reason. But I like it, and I understand that it generally comes from the idea of freedom of speech, because it was the first time in most people's history that they were afforded that voice and and were given that right by law. And so I think that people kind of ran away with it, and maybe they could have done with maybe being a little bit more nuanced over time. But ultimately, I think it's been a very good thing for America. However, the government in America have not been so happy about this. Presidents that have come after the initial Constitution have not necessarily upheld this right as much as they would like to, and it kind of got worse over time. So one of the big examples I can give is in the 1950s, when the American conservatives of the time were extremely overzealous in their pursuit of going after anything that wasn't Christian. Basically, they would use obscenity laws, which to me are inherently anti-freedom of speech, and they would abuse those laws constantly. I'm pretty sure those laws don't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure. I think it was due to Lenny Bruce. Oh, hey, Lev. Nice to see you, man. Thanks for tuning in. I may come back to BTR at some point, but for now, I think I'm just going to make some videos. I was feeling in the mood. I was feeling frisky, so I thought I'd come in, and I was just thinking today, so I thought, you know what, fuck it, let's make a video. Anyway, so in the 80s, through the 50s up to the 80s, the conservative side of America were really going after people, and Lenny Bruce is one of the biggest examples of how these laws were abused. Now, let's see if we can get something up about Lenny Bruce here. Lenny Bruce. Now, if you haven't heard of Lenny Bruce is an iconic and amazing comedian. If you've never listened to his tapes, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them on YouTube, and they're really, really good. They're maybe not always laugh out loud good, like some comedians, but he's very introspective, very clever, very witty, very interesting perspective that he brings to the stage. And he was a very strong counterculture kind of guy. And he was a bit of a hipster, I guess you could say. But he was... how would you put it? Like, not... I guess he was kind of a hipster in the 60s sense rather than, like, the 2000s sense. In that he was kind of from the lower classes a little bit, and he was just kind of roaming around the cities. He was a bit of a junkie. But he was probably going to be okay. He probably would have been all right as a comedian if he wasn't dogged by these religiously dogmatic conservatives who basically pushed him into overdosing on heroin, essentially. Now, he, as you can see here, he was known as Lenny Bruce, a stand-up comedian. He was a social critic and satirist, which he can take... sorry, I'm just skipping ahead a little bit. He had a conviction in 1964 on an obscenity trial, but he got a pardon in 2003. I didn't actually know that. I didn't know that. He got a pardon in 2003. Well done. I mean, you know, he's dead and gone, but I guess it counts for something. Now, Bruce paved the way for counterculture-era comedians. Basically, anyone that you consider a great comedian, like, let's say, George Carlin, who was actually friends with Lenny Bruce, or people like Bill Hicks, Richard Pryor. Basically, anyone who's worth their salt owes their comedic career to Lenny Bruce and his fight for freedom of speech. Now, his trial for obscenity was a landmark for freedom of speech in the United States because it was his trials that was they found that the conservative side were basically in breach of the Constitution, and they gave him he was convicted originally. But then I think when it was overturned later on, that's when it changed. I can't remember when it was overturned. He didn't get a pardon, but it was overturned. I can't remember when. We'd have to do a little bit more research. This isn't really a video about Lenny Bruce, to be honest with you. But he had a bunch of arrests. Like, they would turn up to his fucking shows and wait for him to finish his show on the stage, because I think there was like a weird loophole. While he was on the stage, they couldn't arrest him, but as soon as he stepped off the stage, that's when they could get him. And they would literally wait for him to get off the stage and billy club the bastard. And so, he was arrested a multitude of times, and he fought the cases, and a lot of his stand-up shows during this period of time actually became about that. He came out on stage and would read his trial, basically, to the audience. It wasn't funny, I don't think. I think he was just having a bit of a mental breakdown, in all honesty. But, so he did... His story is one that actually helped usher in an age of freedom of speech into America, because before that, freedom of speech was an idea in America, but it wasn't really there. It was kind of there, wasn't quite there. It was kind of there in the beginning, had a rocky road, and then Lenny Bruce was kind of a flashpoint that opened up freedom of speech in America for a good few decades. And then the 80s were probably a bit shaky, but it kind of was okay. But then we've got to a point now, and this is the main thrust of the video here that we're going to be getting to. So why do I keep doing that? I keep going to YouTube for some reason. I don't need to do that. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat there. Lev's saying he's thinking of doing some informal streams on Odyssey, so there's less pressure, or Patreon-only hangouts. You know what? I probably would be a bit more up for that, I suppose. Something a bit more loosey-goosey, you know. There's something that I can sink my teeth into a little bit more, just because sometimes I feel a little out of place on BTR, you know. I've been in ones where it was like a bunch of journalists talking about, like, particular things in journalism, and I was a bit like, I don't know if I really know what I'm on about here. I gave my 2 cents, but I wasn't sure if it was worth anything. But yeah, no, I'd love to be a part of some of those at some point. Yeah, so yeah, get in touch. I'll see about that. My new work schedule is a bit all over the place. I do work evenings and stuff, so it could be a little difficult. But you know, we'll work something out. Anyway, so now we're gonna get to the point of the video where I want to make my main point about Destiny and about freedom of speech and where it's at these days, because most countries don't have it and have never had it, and America has been pretty much the bastion of it, in my eyes, and in probably most people's eyes throughout the world. And it's been completely lost. I mean, freedom of speech is basically over. It is still somewhat protected by law in America, but we're reaching a point now where social media monopolies have such a corner on speech that they can remove anyone for any reason. And yes, maybe you can say something to your friends behind closed doors, but having a public opinion now is basically completely and utterly destroyed. And the way that they've done it is through private companies. Now, and this is why this is how they've gotten around it in somewhere like America, where they do have it on the books. They have a constitutional right to freedom of speech. However, they found a loophole with private companies to be able to enforce freedom of speech laws by proxy, which, to me, needs to be legislated against as soon as possible. If there's any liberals out there worth their salt, has to come out against it. There has to be a push for legislation that says any social media company that has a monopoly over, so say they have a user base of so many million. We'll call that a monopoly on the public square, let's say. Like we could, I don't know what the legalese words would be, but let's say it's a monopoly on the public square. Let's say that if you have that power, and say you have over 10 million users or something like that, then that means that your terms of service have to coincide with the laws of the land. And if the laws of the land include freedom of speech, that means certain opinions and views have to be allowed on that platform regardless, and they cannot be removed by admins, mods, or the owners of the site. And if that site is to continue to operate, that has to be a fundamental thing that people fight for, because otherwise freedom of speech is actually over. The idea of it is over, because if technology keeps going on like it is, and it will, then there's no coming back. There's literally no coming back. We're literally reaching a point, and I know Destiny's not the first, he's not the last. He's not, this banning on Twitch is not anything new. It's been happening for a long time. This is not something that this is something I've been thinking about for a while. I know what's been going on, and I've been against it for a long time, but it's something that I think needs to be expressed a lot more. And I saw on that debate with Lawrence Southern and Mr. Girl and all those other people on the panel, there was really, no one was mentioning that the power that the companies actually have, and that freedom of speech has been utterly demolished now. There's just no way it's going to come back unless people push to legislate for it. And the only side that seems interested in even approaching that are the Republicans at this point. And even then, they're not fully on board, because they'll do other things, which I'm not so certain about. But if there's any hope for that kind of legislation, it's probably going to come from them at this point, unfortunately. And I say that with a heavy heart, because honestly, you would honestly think that the left wing, especially with their, what's the word for it, their propensity for individualism, we need all different people and viewpoints, diversity and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, they're kind of a bit more like the Borg. Is the left, well, the woke left at this point. The liberal left are almost gone at this point. They really are. A lot of them have been indoctrinated into the hive mind. A lot of them have been disaffected and moved elsewhere, or just become apathetic. But a lot of the liberal left is just completely demolished now. There is no liberal left, really, that has any significant kind of say or power. It's mainly the woke scolds now. It's just the woke tards are running the show, essentially, and they are completely anti-liberal. That's something that I really hate to see people say, especially from the right wing. They really don't have any understanding of what liberalism is, it seems. And a lot of the right wing people who want to defend the Constitution and defend America don't realize that America it's liberal by nature. The Constitution is a liberal constitution. It's baked into it. Liberalism is literally America, right? Freedom of speech is a liberal idea. It was born in France, basically, in terms of like the modern idea of freedom of speech to be codified in a constitution. Even though they couldn't fucking hold on to it. And it's so hard to hold on to it. That's the point. And this is why it's so important. Like, you can see the rocky road that it's had in America, let alone anywhere else. France, it just fucking crashed and burned almost straight away, and it never recovered. And like here in the UK, we have freedom of expression. But like I said before, it's a caveated thing. Freedom of expression basically means, yeah, you can say what you want, but if you say the things that we don't like, then we're going to fine you or put you in prison. And we kind of change and move around the things that we say we don't like all the time. And, who gives a shit? And it's really annoying. I fucking hate it. I fucking hate what it's done to this country. Like, the PC side of things in this country, it's made everything so really black and white. There's people who either want to be so non-PC that they've just become contrarian, either super contrarian or just outright racist or whatever, hateful people, or hateful in other ways as well. Like, I mean, when I talk racist, by the way, I'm not just talking white to black. I'm talking like just people in general. But like, then there's the other side of the PC spectrum who just are walking on eggshells all the time. And then they become hateful too of anybody who steps outside of the PC spectrum. And it's really annoying, man. It's really, really annoying. It should never have come into force. Like, when the liberal revolutions happened, freedom of speech was probably one of the most important things to come out of it, really, fundamentally. Like, if you really drill down into it, I know it sounds like a really simple thing, but you don't understand how massive the implications are to it, because if you don't have freedom of speech, you basically don't have truth. You do not... with freedom of speech comes lies, of course, but without it, you have zero truth whatsoever. You cannot get to any kind of truth without freedom of speech. It just does not exist. All that exists after that is propaganda and agendas and whoever is orchestrating what is acceptable to say. That is all that you have after that. And that is what these companies are creating now. And that is what they're doing. Getting rid of someone like Destiny, right, who has said basically nothing. I think what was it that he said about somebody? He called them subhuman or something, which is like a ridiculous, like, hyperbolic statement. He clearly doesn't think this person is actually subhuman, right? He's not. It's clearly a hyperbolic statement where he's kind of just taking the piss, and he was just a bit annoyed at somebody for having like a ridiculous point of view. And to be honest with you, he could have called him fucking slurs and all kinds, and it should not have been a ban. He should not have been banned. That freedom of speech should have been there. Now, if people wanted to pull out of his subscription thing or whatever, then they could have done that. That's capitalism, baby. You know, if people don't like what you're saying, then they can move, you know, they vote with their money. You know, it's as simple as that. Liberalism 101, you know? And fucking these guys, like, they enjoy the power. When these people get hold of, when they have this kind of control, they love it. And they sit there and they say to themselves, they'll be like, oh, you know, I really think that kids should be able to chop their dicks off and shit, you know? And I really want that to happen. I don't know why I want it to happen, but I think it's just really good. Maybe it's because I've got empathy. Maybe my empathy is what is telling me that I need that kids who are upset or confused about their gender, just like every other kid is, you know, which is a completely normal thing to go through in life. Maybe we should give them the right to cut their fucking penis off, you know? Wait a minute, if you're self-harming, that's a problem. We got to stop that. But hey, if you want to chop your dick and your tits off, well, let's go to town. You know, hey, I'm against capitalism, but, you know, all these surgeons that want to make money off all these mentally deranged people, deluded people who want to mutilate themselves, hey, have at it, capitalism. Like, are these people fucking morons? Like, are these people actually sorry, I'm going off on a different tangent now, but I'm just saying, like, these people, their agenda and their shit don't make sense, and then they've got this power, this agenda and they're holding it over people's heads, and it's getting out of control. Either the government steps in and enforces freedom of speech as a massive win for liberalism, or we allow these companies to run roughshod over this ideal, which we've struggled for a very long time. We're gonna let them run roughshod over that, sacrifice it, and then that's a big win for the anti-liberal wokists, the Marxists, the socialists, and it's a big win for the monarchists, the fucking fascists, and all these fucking bastards out there who seriously have some fucking crazy complexes going on. And we cannot let that happen. We cannot let it happen, and it's literally happening right in front of our eyes every single fucking day. Every single fucking day it's happening. Like, not long ago, I say not long ago, good few months ago, I had a big public spat with Mr. Joel Davis, of all people. I'm sure if there's any crossover from BTR, you know who Joel Davis is. And if you don't know who Joel Davis is, he's essentially a far-right monarchist, white nationalist type guy. And he claims that he's from the UK somehow, but I don't fucking know. I'm pretty sure he's Australian. Anyway, we had a big Twitter spat about shit to do with liberalism and his ideology and whatever. It doesn't even really matter, to be honest with you. And it got a bit ugly, it got a bit personal. I kind of don't care, but it was a bit annoying at the time, I'm not going to lie. I did get a bit triggered. I'm not above admitting that. However, it is one of them where it's... Then the next day, actually, sorry, my thoughts are all over the place. You're going to have to forgive me. The next day, he was banned from Twitter, and I don't know why. There was actually a bit of a purge that night, and a bunch of people just disappeared from Twitter. And I posted a tweet the next day to say, oh, because I went back, I was going to go back to the Twitter thread to kind of look through it and see if there was any kind of points I was actually even thinking about maybe making a video on it, but I wasn't sure. And I went back and I could see that like his tweets were kind of gone. I think it's gone, or maybe the whole Twitter thread was gone. I can't remember, but I remember going back and it was like, this has disappeared, basically. And then I tried to find Joel Davis and I couldn't find him anywhere. So obviously he'd been, erased, essentially. And I made a tweet the next day to basically say, look, had a big argument with this guy the other day, and I fucking hate his views. I think they're ridiculous, but there's no way that he should be banned. It sets a terrible precedent. It sets an awful precedent. And it just bolsters their side. They sit around there throwing terms around like liberal fascism and shit like that. It's like, what the fuck is liberal fascism? It's ridiculous. Like, okay, I can kind of understand what they mean, but it's not really in the spirit of what it is, and like it bolsters their ideas of how they think of liberals and liberalism. Like they think that we want to hammer down any opinion that goes against the liberal ideal, and at the end of the day, obviously, me as a liberal, I want to oppose that kind of stuff. But I want to do it on an even ground. I want to do it on legal, even ground, right? Where it's not this weird agenda that is being created by elites that are fucking divorced from fucking liberalism anyway themselves. I'm not a fan of them as much as I am of these people, but they should not have the power to silence people like that. Now, Joel Davis, I think, is still on YouTube, I think. You can catch him there. Fuck it, I'll plug Joel Davis. I don't give a shit. Like, but fucking, but eventually these people are going to get silenced and it's going to bolster them even more. This is the problem. This is the thing that I've been saying since Donald fucking Trump. Like, this constant, like, authoritarian kind of push that's coming from all sides, in all honesty. It's coming from a lot of places, but mainly from the woke side at this point in time. It's gotta stop. It's gotta fucking stop, and it's gotta stop somewhere. And I don't know what's happening, man. People don't even know what a liberal is anymore. People think a liberal is a woke leftist. It's not. It's really not. And I'm starting to trip over my own words because I'm getting mad. I'm getting really mad about this. I've been thinking about it all day when I've been in work, and it's blowing my mind that people cannot see that these companies, like, people will try out this thing every time. Well, they're a private company. They can do whatever they want. And a lot of the times, I would actually agree with that. But when you become a monopoly, that's when I'm starting to disagree. When you're having government subsidies, that's when I'm starting to think, no, if you're going to get government subsidies and tax breaks and all that kind of stuff and lobbyists and you're starting to get intertwined with the government, that's when you have to start abiding by the laws of the fucking land, okay? Especially in regards to very particular things like speech, right? If you're policing speech. Now, the laws of the land would still include harassment and threats of violence and libel and all that stuff that we've outlined. Those restrictions to freedom of speech are, I believe, to be okay, right? One thing that I don't like is hate speech, because it's such a vague and loosely defined term that it can literally be shaped and molded by whoever's in power at the time, and it can be shaped and molded by any of these companies to mean whatever they want, hence the Destiny banning, which they probably wanted to do anyway and just found any little excuse to do. And this is the abuse of power that we're talking about. And this is why it has to be stopped. And if we don't step in to stop it, and if we don't push for policy like that, and if we don't stand by liberal ideals such as freedom of speech and actually put some fucking welly behind it, then we're going to have nothing. Liberalism will die. Freedom of speech will be over, and is over at this point. At this point in time, freedom of speech is over. It's gone. It's completely gone. It's not here. Like, if you believe freedom of speech is here, you're an idiot. You have no clue what's going on. And this is just what we've got to do, man. This is just what we've got to do. And I don't know if I've got anything more to say on it. I just gave a little bit of a brief history of freedom of speech. I'm not going into full depth of the all the different legal shit to do with freedom of speech. I'm sure there's much more intelligent, much better people out there who can put something that's, well, much better crafted together, and they probably already have. So, but I just wanted to give my point of view on it, because I think the centrists out here, a lot of the liberals, a lot of the people who find themselves on, centre left, centre right, we're at a loss, and we do want to champion freedom of speech, but we don't know how, and we don't know what to target or attack, and we know we don't like cancel culture, and we know we don't like what these companies are doing, but it seems like nobody can put their finger on what to actually do. And I'm saying, I think I've found the thing to put the finger on, and I think we need to fucking do that, and I think there needs to be way more discussions of it, and I would love to see more freedom of speech marches in America. I know that was generally a right-wing thing, but I would love to see a freedom of speech movement in America that is cross-party, cross-platform, cross-party. Anyone who cares about freedom of speech should be involved in that. And I want to see a new push from liberals to reclaim liberalism for what it is, and have to not redefine it, but just give people the actual definition of what liberalism is, because it seems like a lot of people don't know what the fuck it is. A lot of these woke people think they're fucking liberals. They're fucking not, man. They're fucking idiots, man. They're idiots, a lot of these people. And it's just unbelievable. So if you don't want freedom of speech to be over, if you care about it like I do, if you care about the ongoing fight for rights, I suppose, for just the regular people, to be able to share their experiences, share their thoughts on the government, to be able to organize between themselves, for whatever reason they want to, that goes for anybody of any political stripe. If you care about that, then you have to care about this, and it's just I'm losing things to say here, because it is. I feel like I've got my point across here. I don't know how to end the video. I never know how to end the video, ever. I never know how to end a video, but I don't know. Get in the comments. Let me know what you think. I never delete comments or anything like that. So if it is removed or deleted for any reason, it's YouTube algorithm stuff. Nothing to do with me. I'm dedicated to that freedom of speech. I would never do that. I would just never do it. So yeah, get in the comments section. Let me know what you think about freedom of speech, the current state of things. Let me know if you think I'm onto something with where I'm at with it, or where I'm trying to put my finger down on what kind of policy we should push for. Maybe if any of you out there have a little bit more of an insight into, legalese, you could maybe formulate something, a slightly better idea there. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say on it. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. I've been the base centrist. That's right, I'm going to rebrand. I'm going to be the base centrist. No more average anymore. We're going to be based from now on. No more holding back. No more being polite. No more filtered thoughts. We're going to go unfiltered from now on. And I'm gonna be talking a little bit more about other stuff other than political stuff. I'm gonna start speaking a little bit more about men and women. I'm gonna be speaking a little bit more about probably YouTube and Twitch drama and stuff, and some of the themes that come out of that. I'm also, I don't know, just whatever comes to mind, really. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of go with the flow a little bit more. I think I've just been limiting myself a little bit too much, and I just don't care anymore. I think I just don't care anymore. So yeah, that's it. I'm back, and I'm better than ever, in the words of AC/DC. So thanks very much, and peace out.